The stars were cold and silent in the deep space beyond the outer rim. Captain Tiho Kang stood at the bridge of the UES Iron Wake, watching the darkness through the main window. His ship was old but strong. It had survived many battles, and so had he. The Iron Wake was on patrol duty. It was boring work. For 3 weeks they had seen nothing but empty space and distant stars. The crew was restless. Some played cards in the lower decks. Others slept. But Tiho never rested easy. He had learned long ago that danger comes when you least expect it. Lieutenant Hana Yoon sat at her station, her fingers moving across the control panel. She was young but brilliant. Her eyes were sharp, and her mind was sharper. She noticed things that others missed. That was why Tiho trusted her more than anyone else on the ship. "Captain," Hana said suddenly. Her voice was calm, but Tiho knew her well enough to hear the tension beneath it. "We are receiving a signal." Tiho turned to face her. "What kind of signal?" "Distress call, encrypted. It is coming from Velan space." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew about the Velan. They were a peaceful species, insect-like creatures with delicate bodies and gentle spirits. They had no army, no weapons. They believed in harmony and peace. The galaxy considered them weak, unimportant. Tiho walked to Hana's station and looked at the data on her screen. The signal was desperate. The words were broken, but the message was clear. Someone was dying, many someones. "Play it," Tiho ordered. Hana pressed a button. Static filled the bridge, and then a voice emerged. It was high and frightened. It spoke in the common galactic language, but the accent was clearly Velan. "This is Ambassador Kilath of the Velan Collective. Please, anyone who can hear this, we are under attack. The Krath Dominion has invaded our world. They are killing everyone. Our cities are burning. Our people are dying. We have sent messages to the Galactic Union, but no one answers. No one is coming. Please, if anyone can hear this, help us. Help us before it is too late." The message ended. The bridge was silent. Tiho stood very still. He had heard of the Krath Dominion. Everyone had. They were conquerors, massive reptilian warriors who crushed entire civilizations for sport. They had never lost a war. They had never shown mercy. And now they were slaughtering the Velan. "Lieutenant," Tiho said quietly, "why is no one responding?" Hana's face was hard. "The Velan have nothing the Union wants. No resources, no strategic value. The big powers will not risk their ships for a species that cannot pay them back." Tiho felt something dark rise in his chest. It was anger, old and familiar. He had seen this before. The strong ignoring the weak, the powerful abandoning the helpless. It was the oldest story in the universe. "How far is Velan Prime?" he asked. 14 hours at maximum warp," Hana answered. She paused. "Captain, the Krath have a massive fleet. If we go there, we will be outnumbered. Badly." "I know. We could die." "I know that too." Sergeant Minyu Park stepped onto the bridge. He was a giant of a man, with arms like tree trunks and a face covered in scars. He led the ground combat team, the soldiers they called the Death Squad. He had heard the message through the ship's speakers. "Are we going?" Minyu asked. His voice was deep and rough. Tiho looked at him. "What do you think?" Minyu smiled. It was not a nice smile. "I think the Krath have never fought humans before. I think they do not know what a Deathworlder can do. I think we should teach them." Tiho nodded slowly. He turned to face the bridge crew. They were all watching him, waiting. Some looked scared, others looked excited, but none of them looked away. "Listen to me," Tiho said. "The galaxy calls us Deathworlders. They fear us because we come from Earth, a planet with crushing gravity, poison air, extreme temperatures, predators in every corner. They think we are monsters. Maybe they are right." He paused and let his words sink in. "But those monsters down there on Velan Prime, the Krath, they hurt the innocent. They kill the weak. They burn cities full of people who never held a weapon, and the rest of the galaxy watches and does nothing." Tiho's voice grew harder. I am not going to do nothing. I am going to Velen Prime. I am going to find the Krath, and I am going to show them what happens when you make Earth angry. Anyone who wants to stay behind can take an escape pod. No shame, no judgment, but I am going." No one moved toward the escape pods. Dr. Narration, the ship's medic, stepped forward. She was small and quiet, with gentle hands that had saved hundreds of lives. "I will prepare the medical bay," she said simply. "We will have wounded." Private Suho Beek, the youngest member of the crew, stood near the back. He was barely 20 years old. His hands were shaking slightly, but he did not move. He was staying. Tiho looked at his crew and felt something warm beneath his anger. Pride. These were his people, his family. "Hana," he said, "set course for Velen Prime, maximum warp." "Yes, Captain." The Iron Wake hummed with power as its engines came to life. The stars outside began to stretch and blur as the ship jumped to warp speed. 14 hours. That was all the time they had. Tiho spent those hours preparing. Minyu drilled his death squad in the cargo bay. Hana ran battle simulations over and over. Nari organized her supplies, and Suho sat alone in his quarters, staring at the wall and trying not to be afraid. When they finally dropped out of warp, the sight before them stole their breath. Velen Prime hung in space like a wounded animal. Great fires burned across its surface, visible even from orbit. Smoke clouds covered entire continents, and around the planet, like vultures circling a corpse, floated dozens of Krath warships. Massive, black, covered in weapons. Hana's voice was steady but barely. "I count 47 enemy vessels. They have detected us." On the main screen, a Krath ship turned toward them. Its weapons began to glow. Tiho sat down in his captain's chair. His face was calm. His eyes were cold. "All hands," he said into the ship's communication system. "Battle stations. We have arrived." The Iron Wake flew forward into the fire. One human ship against an empire of killers. And in the burning cities below, the Velen looked up at the sky and saw a single point of light descending toward them. They did not know what it was. They did not know who was coming. But the Krath were about to find out. The first Krath missile screamed through space toward the Iron Wake. Lieutenant Hana Yoon did not flinch. Her fingers danced across the control panel, and the ship rolled hard to the left. The missile passed so close that they could see the fire in its engine. "Return fire," Captain Tiho ordered. The Iron Wake's guns roared to life. Human weapons were different from anything else in the galaxy. They were not elegant. They were not beautiful. They were designed for one purpose only: to destroy. The first Krath cruiser took 3 direct hits. Its shields flickered and died. The fourth shot tore through its hull like paper. Explosions bloomed across its surface, and then the entire ship broke apart in a ball of fire. On the Krath command ship, Warlord GHX watched in disbelief. He was massive even for a Krath, 12 feet tall, covered in scales the color of dried blood. Scars crossed his face like a map of violence. He had conquered 30 worlds. He had killed thousands with his own hands. He had never seen one of his ships destroyed so quickly. "What is that vessel?" he demanded. His second-in-command, Commander Voss, checked the sensors. Unknown design. The energy signature matches records from a species called humans. They are new to the galaxy, from a planet called Earth. GHX had heard of Earth, a death world, a planet so dangerous that nothing should be able to survive there. The creatures who lived on such worlds were called Deathworlders. Most species avoided them. "One ship," GHX growled. "They send one ship against my fleet. Are they insane?" "Perhaps," Voss said. "Or perhaps they do not understand what they face." GHX laughed. It was a terrible sound. "Then we will teach them. All ships destroy that vessel. Leave nothing but dust." 20 Krath warships turned their weapons toward the Iron Wake. On the human ship, alarms screamed. Hana's eyes moved across dozens of screens at once. Multiple targets locking on. I count 23 incoming missile tracks. Tiho did not hesitate. Evasive pattern Delta. Target their lead ships. If we take those out, the others might hesitate. The Iron Wake dove and spun through space like a dancer. Human ships were smaller than craft vessels, but they were faster, much faster. Missiles exploded behind them, beside them, above them, but none of them hit. Hana fired again and again. Another craft ship lost its engines. A third had its weapons array torn away. The human guns were relentless. Below, on the surface of Velen Prime, Sergeant Minu Park felt the drop pod shake around him. He was crammed into a metal box with 11 other soldiers. The Death Squad. The best fighters humanity had. 30 seconds to surface, the computer announced. Minu looked at his team. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes, but they were also ready. These were not ordinary soldiers. They had trained on Earth where even the training could kill you. They had fought in wars that the galaxy knew nothing about. They were weapons wrapped in human skin. Listen up, Minu said. When we hit the ground, we move fast and we hit hard. The Krath are big and strong, but they are slow. They have never fought anything that fights back. Today, we show them what fear feels like. Private Suho Beak gripped his rifle tighter. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. He was the youngest, the newest. He had never killed anyone before. Dr. Narration sat beside him. She carried no rifle, only medical supplies. Her job was to save lives, not take them. But there was no fear in her eyes, only calm determination. You will be fine, she told Suho quietly. Stay close to the others, do what they do, and remember why we are here. Suho nodded. He tried to believe her. The drop pod hit the atmosphere like a meteor. Fire surrounded them. The metal screamed, and then with a tremendous crash they hit the ground. The doors blew open, and the death squad poured out into hell. The city around them was burning. Buildings lay in ruins. Bodies were everywhere. Velen bodies. Small, insect-like creatures with delicate wings now broken and still. The smell of smoke and death filled the air. Minu did not pause. He raised his hand and signaled his team forward. They moved through the streets like ghosts, fast and silent. They found the Krath quickly. A group of 10 warriors stood in a plaza, laughing as they burned a building. Inside the building, Velen screamed. The Krath did not care. They enjoyed the sound. Minu felt the old rage rise inside him. He had seen monsters before. On Earth, humans had done terrible things to each other. But they had also learned to stop the monsters, to become something the monsters feared. Take them, he whispered. The death squad attacked. The first Krath died before he knew what was happening. A bullet through his skull. The second turned just in time to see Minu's plasma blade slice through his chest. The weapon burned white-hot, cutting through scales and armor like they were nothing. The remaining Krath tried to fight. They were twice the size of the humans. They had claws that could tear through metal. They had teeth like knives. It did not matter. The humans were faster, stronger than they looked, and they fought with a fury that shocked the Krath. These creatures did not hesitate. They did not show mercy. They killed with cold efficiency. In 30 seconds, all 10 Krath were dead. Suho stood over the body of the warrior he had killed. His knife was still buried in its throat. His hands were covered in blood. He felt sick. The world spun around him. Minu put a hand on his shoulder. First one is always the hardest, he said quietly. It gets easier. That is the scary part. Suho nodded, but he could not speak. He pulled his knife free and followed the others. They moved deeper into the city. Everywhere they went, they found horror. Krath warriors hunting Velen survivors, burning buildings, mass graves. The invaders were not just conquering this world. They were erasing it. The death squad killed every enemy they found. They rescued every survivor they could. Dr. Nari set up a field hospital in a collapsed temple, treating wounded Velen with gentle hands while chaos raged outside. Ambassador Kilath found them there. He was wounded, one of his wings torn away, but he was alive. When he saw the humans, he fell to his knees. "You came," he whispered. "You actually came." Minyu helped him stand. "We heard your call, we could not ignore it." "But why? No one else came. The Union abandoned us. We have nothing to offer you, nothing to give." Minyu looked at the ambassador with eyes that had seen too much death. "You do not need to offer us anything. We do not fight for payment. We fight because someone has to." Elder Orin, the spiritual leader of the Velan, watched the humans from across the temple. He was old, his carapace cracked and faded. He had lived through many troubles, but he had never seen creatures like these. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "what have you summoned? These beings fight like demons. They kill without hesitation. They do not run from death. They run toward it." Kilath watched as Dr. Nari gently wrapped a bandage around a Velen child's broken arm. The human woman was humming softly, her touch careful and kind. "Perhaps they are demons," Kilath said. "But if they are, then they are our demons. And right now, we need demons more than angels." Outside, the sounds of battle continued. The Krath were everywhere, thousands of them, and the humans numbered only 12 on the ground with one ship in the sky. But the Iron Wake was still fighting, and the Death Squad was still killing. The Krath had never faced anything like this. They had conquered worlds with ease. They had crushed armies that outnumbered them. But these humans were different. These humans did not know how to surrender. Warlord Ghatrex received reports from the surface and felt something he had not felt in decades: doubt. "What are these creatures?" he asked again. No one could answer him. And in the burning city below, Minyu Park looked up at the sky and smiled grimly. The night was long. The enemy was endless, but humanity had answered the call. Now the Krath would learn what that meant. The Temple of 1,000 Moons had stood for 10,000 years. It was the most sacred place on Velen Prime. Its walls were carved with prayers. Its gardens held flowers that bloomed only once every century. It was a place of peace. Now it was a fortress. 10,000 Velen survivors huddled inside its ancient walls. Mothers held their children close. Elders whispered prayers to gods who seemed to have abandoned them. Young Vila, a small child with bright eyes and broken wings, pressed herself against the cold stone and tried not to cry. Outside, the Krath army gathered. 3,000 warriors surrounded the temple. Their weapons gleamed in the firelight from the burning city. Warlord Ghatrex had given them simple orders: kill everyone inside, leave no survivors, make an example of these insects who dared to call for help. But between the Krath and the temple stood 12 humans. Sergeant Minyu Park looked at the enemy army spreading across the valley. He counted their numbers without emotion. 3,000 against 12. The odds were bad, worse than bad, but Minyu had faced bad odds before. "We hold this position," he told his team. "No one gets past us. No one touches those civilians." Private Suho Beak stared at the sea of enemies. His hands were steady now. 2 days of constant fighting had burned the fear out of him. He was not the same boy who had landed on this planet. War had changed him. "We cannot hold them forever," Suho said. "There are too many." "We do not need to hold them forever," Minyu replied. "Just long enough for the captain to break the blockade. Once the ship can provide support, we can push them back." High above, the Iron Wake was fighting for its life. Lieutenant Hana Yoon had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red and burning. Her fingers ached from working the controls. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Every moment she held the enemy fleet at bay was another moment her people on the ground stayed alive. Captain Tiho stood at her side. His uniform was torn. A bandage covered a wound on his arm. 3 enemy boarding parties had tried to take the ship. 3 times the crew had thrown them back. Status report, Tiho said. Hana pulled up the data. Shields at 30%. Main weapons at half power. We have lost engines 3 and 4. 15 crew dead, 22 wounded. And the enemy? We have destroyed 11 of their ships, damaged 9 more, but they still outnumber us 4-1. Tiho nodded slowly. The numbers were not good, but numbers were not everything. Humans had always fought against impossible odds. It was what they did. Reroute power from life support to weapons, Tiho ordered. We can breathe later. Right now, we need to hit them harder. Hana did not argue. She made the adjustments. The air on the bridge grew thin and cold, but the guns roared louder than ever. On the surface, the Krath attack began. The first wave charged the temple walls. They screamed battle cries that had made entire civilizations surrender in terror. They ran with weapons raised and death in their eyes. The death squad opened fire. Human rifles cracked like thunder. Each shot found its target. Krath warriors fell by the dozens, but more kept coming, always more. Minyu stood at the front line, his plasma blade humming with deadly light. When the first enemy reached him, he cut it down with a single stroke. Then another, then another. His arms burned with exhaustion, but he did not slow. Suho fought beside him. The young soldier moved like water now, flowing from one enemy to the next. He did not think anymore. He just acted. Point, shoot, kill, move. His body knew what to do even when his mind could not follow. Dr. Nari had set up her hospital inside the temple. Wounded humans and Velen lay side by side on the ancient floors. She moved between them like a ghost, patching wounds, stopping bleeding, saving lives one at a time. A Krath warrior broke through a side door. It was massive, its scales black as night, its teeth dripping with blood. It saw Nari and lunged for her. She did not scream. She did not run. She picked up a surgical laser, a tool meant for delicate operations, and she cut the creature's throat with a single precise motion. Then she turned back to her patient and continued stitching a wound closed as if nothing had happened. Young Vila watched from the corner. She had never seen anything like these humans. They were smaller than the Krath, softer. They had no scales, no claws, no natural weapons, but they fought like nothing she had ever imagined. During a pause in the battle, Vila approached Private Suho. He was sitting against a wall, reloading his rifle. His face was covered in dirt and blood. He looked tired, so tired. "Why are you helping us?" Vila asked in her small voice. Suho looked at her. She reminded him of his little sister back on Earth. The same innocent eyes, the same way of asking questions that had no easy answers. "Because someone has to," he said finally. "But you could die, all of you could die." Suho smiled sadly. "Yes, we could, probably will, but that does not change anything." Vila did not understand. Why not? Suho thought for a long moment. "On my world on Earth, we have a saying. The measure of a person is not what they do when it is easy. It is what they do when it is hard. Anyone can be brave when there is no danger. True courage is standing up when you know you might fall." Vila sat down beside him. "You are strange creatures," she said. "Yes," Suho agreed, "we are." Outside, the battle raged on. The first wave was broken. Krath bodies covered the ground like a carpet, but the second wave was coming, and it was bigger. Minyu looked at his team. They were bleeding, exhausted, running low on ammunition. 2 of his soldiers were dead. 3 more were wounded badly enough that they could barely stand. 7 humans left, against thousands. "Well," Minyu said, looking at the approaching army, "I was getting bored anyway." No one laughed, but no one ran either. They took their positions, they checked their weapons, they prepared to die. Elder Orin stood at the temple entrance, watching the humans. He had lived a long life. He had seen many things, but he had never seen beings like these. "What are they?" he asked Ambassador Kilath. Kilath stood beside him, his wounded body held upright by sheer will. They are humans. They come from a death world, a planet so dangerous that every creature there learns to fight from the moment it is born. They fight like demons, Orin whispered. Yes, Kileth agreed. But look at them, Elder. Look at what they fight for. Not for territory, not for resources, not for glory. They fight for strangers, for people they have never met. They are dying for us, Elder. What kind of demon does that? Orin had no answer. The second wave hit. It was brutal, overwhelming. The Krath pushed forward with terrible fury. They knew they were losing soldiers, but they did not care. They had numbers. They could afford losses. The humans fell back, step by step, body by body. They killed 10 enemies for every one they lost, but the math was still against them. The temple walls began to crack. And then, through the chaos of battle, a message crackled through their communicators. It was Captain Tiho's voice. Ground team, hold position. We have broken through. Air support incoming. Repeat, air support incoming. Minyu looked up at the sky. Through the smoke and fire he saw it. The iron wake, battered and burning but still flying, descending through the atmosphere. Its guns blazed, sending streams of fire into the Krath positions below. Explosions ripped through the enemy army. Krath warriors scattered and ran. For the first time in the battle, they knew fear. Minyu raised his blade high. Now we push back for Earth, for humanity, for every soul in that temple. The Death Squad charged. And the Krath learned that humans did not know how to give up. Not ever. Not until the very last one of them stopped breathing. The iron wake fell through the sky like an angel of death. Captain Tiho guided his wounded ship with steady hands. The hull was burning. Half the systems were offline. But the guns still worked, and that was all that mattered. Lieutenant Hana sat at her station, blood running down her face from a cut on her forehead. She did not wipe it away. There was no time. Her fingers flew across the controls, targeting enemy positions with deadly accuracy. Fire, she said quietly, again and again. Fire, fire, fire. Below, the Krath army shattered. They had never faced attack from the air. Their ships were in orbit, fighting a losing battle against what remained of the enemy fleet. No one had told them that the human vessel could enter the atmosphere. No one had warned them what those weapons could do at close range. Entire battalions vanished in balls of fire. Tanks exploded. Command posts disintegrated. The carefully organized assault became chaos in moments. Warlord HFY watched from his command position on a hill overlooking the temple. His massive hands gripped the railing until the metal bent. Rage burned in his eyes like twin suns. How, he roared, how is this possible? One ship against my entire fleet. Commander Voss stood beside him, his scales pale with fear. The humans fight differently than any species we have faced. They do not value their own lives. They attack when they should retreat. They charge when they should surrender. They are insane, HFY snarled. Perhaps, Voss agreed, but their insanity is winning. HFY made a decision. He had not survived 100 battles by running away. He had survived by crushing his enemies with his own hands. If his army could not defeat these humans, then he would do it himself. I am going down there, HFY announced, personally. Voss's eyes widened. Warlord, that is dangerous. The humans have proven. HFY grabbed Voss by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Do you think I am afraid of small, soft creatures? I am HFY. I have killed kings and emperors. I have bathed in the blood of my enemies. These humans will learn what true power looks like. He threw Voss aside and descended toward the battlefield. Meanwhile, Captain Tiho made his own decision. Hana, take command of the ship, he said, standing from his chair. Hana stared at him. Captain, their command ship is vulnerable. I am taking a drop pod and a strike team. We are going to cut off the head of the snake. That is suicide. Tiho smiled grimly. Probably, but if we kill their leaders, the rest will fall apart. The Krath only follow strength. When they see their commanders die, they will break. He put his hand on her shoulder. Keep the ship flying, keep our people alive. I am counting on you. Hana wanted to argue, but she knew that look in his eyes. She had seen it before every impossible mission he had ever survived. Yes, Captain, she said, come back alive. I always do. He did not look back as he walked to the drop bay. The drop pod screamed toward the Krath command ship. Inside, Tiho and 5 volunteers gripped their weapons and prepared for the worst. They hit the enemy vessel hard, tearing through the hull and crashing into a corridor filled with Krath warriors. The fight was immediate and brutal. Krath soldiers rushed toward them from every direction. Tiho moved like water, his combat training taking over completely. He shot 2 enemies in the head, then used his knife to cut the throat of a third. His team spread out around him, covering each angle. They pushed deeper into the ship. Every step was paid for in blood, but they did not stop. Commander Voss met them in the main corridor. He was armed with a massive blade, curved and cruel. He looked at the humans with contempt. You think you can win, he hissed. You think you can defeat the Dominion. We have crushed 100 worlds. You are nothing. Tiho stepped forward. We do not need to defeat your Dominion. We just need to defeat you. Voss attacked with blinding speed. His blade cut through the air like lightning. Tiho barely dodged the first strike. The second cut his arm, drawing blood. But Tiho did not fall back. He moved closer, inside the reach of that long blade, and then he struck. His knife found the gap between Voss's scales. The commander gasped, staggered. Tiho struck again, and again. Voss fell to his knees. Blood poured from a dozen wounds. He looked up at Tiho with dying eyes. What are you? He whispered. Human, Tiho answered, and he ended it. He grabbed the ship's communication system and broadcast his voice across all Krath channels. Your commander is dead. Your command ship is taken. Surrender now or join him. On the surface, the Krath heard the message. Their formation wavered. Doubt spread through their ranks like poison. And then Warlord HFY arrived. He strode onto the battlefield like a god of war, 12 feet tall, covered in ancient scars. His armor was black and red, decorated with the skulls of fallen enemies. He carried a weapon that most species could not even lift, a massive war hammer that had crushed countless foes. I am HFY, he bellowed. I am the warlord of the Dominion. I have never lost a battle. I challenge any human to face me. Show me your champion. Let me kill him in front of your dying species. The Krath rallied around their leader. His presence alone gave them courage. Sergeant Minyu Park stepped forward. He was wounded. His left arm hung useless at his side, broken in 3 places. Blood covered his face. His plasma blade flickered, its power nearly exhausted. But his eyes were calm. I accept your challenge, he said. HFY laughed. The sound was like thunder. Look at you, you are already half dead, you cannot defeat me. Then this should be easy for you, Minyu replied. The Krath formed a circle around them. The surviving humans watched from the temple walls. Young Vila pressed her face against the stone, unable to look away. HFY attacked first. His hammer swung through the air with enough force to crush a tank. Minyu dove aside, the weapon missing him by inches. The ground where he had stood exploded into rubble. Minyu was faster, but HFY was stronger. Every hit the human landed seemed to do nothing. Every dodge cost more energy than Minyu could spare. The hammer caught Minyu in the side. He heard ribs crack. He flew through the air and hit the ground hard. HFY stood over him. I told you, you cannot win. Minyu coughed blood. He looked up at the warlord and he smiled. Maybe not, he said, but I do not need to win, I just need to hurt you. He moved, faster than a wounded man should be able to move. His plasma blade came up, driving straight into GHRX's leg. The warlord screamed as the weapon burned through scale and muscle. GHRX swung his hammer wildly. Minyu pulled himself forward, using the blade still buried in the warlord's leg. He climbed the giant like a mountain. The hammer caught his shoulder. Minyu felt something tear inside him. He ignored it. He reached GHRX's face. The warlord tried to grab him, but Minyu was already moving. He pulled a knife from his belt, short and sharp. He drove it into GHRX's eye. The warlord screamed, a sound that no Krath had ever heard him make. He staggered, clutching his face. Minyu fell to the ground. He could not stand. He could barely breathe. But he had done it. GHRX collapsed. The greatest warlord in Krath history, brought down by a broken human with nothing but a knife and fury. The Krath army watched their leader fall, and then they ran. Not a retreat, a rout, complete and total. They fled toward their ships, toward anything that would take them away from this cursed world and these terrifying creatures. The battle was over. As the sun rose over Velen Prime, the surviving humans stood among the ruins, bloodied, broken, but alive. Captain Tiho landed near the temple. He found Elder Orin kneeling in the dust, tears streaming down his ancient face. "What are you?" the elder asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Tiho helped him stand. He looked at the burning city, at the bodies of friend and enemy alike, at the refugees emerging from the temple with hope in their eyes. "We are human," he said simply. "Nothing more, nothing less." 1 month passed. Velen Prime was healing, slowly, painfully, but healing. The fires had stopped. The smoke had cleared. Where there had been destruction, there was now construction. Velen workers moved through the ruins, carefully salvaging what could be saved and clearing what could not. They were rebuilding their world. But they were not alone. Human engineers worked beside them. Human doctors treated the wounded and sick. Human soldiers stood guard at the borders, watching for any sign that the Krath might return. They had stayed. When the battle ended, Captain Tiho had offered to leave. The Velen had begged them to stay. "We have nothing to pay you with," Ambassador Kilath had said. "Our cities are ash. Our treasury is empty. We cannot reward you for what you have done." Tiho had shaken his head. "We did not come for payment. We came because you needed help, and you still need help, so we will stay until you do not need us anymore." No species in galactic history had ever done such a thing. Armies fought for conquest. Mercenaries fought for money. No one fought for strangers and then stayed to clean up the mess. The galaxy did not know what to make of it. Reports spread through the Galactic Union like wildfire. A single human ship had challenged the Krath Dominion. 12 human soldiers had held off 3,000 enemy warriors. A human captain had killed the commander of the Krath fleet in single combat. A human sergeant had defeated warlord GHRX himself. Some called it propaganda, others called it exaggeration, but the evidence was impossible to deny. The Krath Dominion, undefeated for 3 centuries, had been broken by humans. Captain Tiho Kang was summoned to appear before the Galactic Union Assembly. He went alone. His ship remained in orbit around Velen Prime, still undergoing repairs. His crew stayed behind to continue helping the Velen rebuild. He took a small shuttle and flew across the galaxy to the Union capital. The assembly hall was massive. 1,000 species had representatives there. They sat in rows that stretched up toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Creatures of every shape and size looked down at the small human standing at the center of the floor. A booming voice echoed through the hall. "Captain Tiho, Kang of Earth, you are called to answer for your actions in Velen space." Tiho looked up at the assembled powers of the galaxy. He was not afraid. He had faced worse than politicians. "I am here," he said simply. "You intervened in a conflict that did not concern your species. You attacked vessels of the Krath Dominion, a recognized galactic power. You caused the deaths of thousands of Krath warriors. What do you have to say for yourself?" Tiho was silent for a moment. He thought about the burning cities, the dead Velan, the desperate message that no one else had answered. "I say that the Velan sent a distress call to this union," he replied. His voice was calm but carried through the entire hall. "They begged for help. They said they were being slaughtered, and no one answered. Not one ship, not one soldier, not one word of support." Murmurs spread through the assembly. "The Velan have nothing of value to offer," a representative called out. "They are a minor species. Their world has no strategic importance." "So their lives have no value?" Tiho asked. "Silence." "That is what you are telling me. That because they are small and weak and have nothing to trade, they deserve to die. That is the law of this galaxy. The strong do what they want. The weak suffer and perish." He paused and looked around the hall. Thousands of eyes stared back at him, some hostile, some curious, some ashamed. "On my world on Earth, we have done terrible things to each other. We have had wars that killed millions. We have committed acts of cruelty that I am not proud of. We are not innocent. We are not pure. We carry the weight of our own sins." His voice grew harder. "But we also learned something. We learned that when the powerful prey on the weak and no one stands up, everyone suffers eventually. We learned that the only thing evil needs to win is for good people to do nothing. We learned that if you have the strength to help and you choose not to, then you are part of the problem." He pointed toward the assembly. "You call us Deathworlders, monsters, creatures from a planet so dangerous that we should not exist. Maybe you are right. Maybe we are monsters, but our monsters protect the weak. What do yours do?" The silence that followed was absolute. Then Ambassador Kilath stepped forward. He had been invited to attend as a witness. His body was still healing. He walked with difficulty, but his voice was strong. "The Velan Collective formally requests an alliance with Earth. We wish to stand with the humans, to learn from them, to walk beside them into whatever future awaits." Another voice spoke, a representative from a small mining world that had been bullied by larger powers for generations. "We also request alliance with Earth." Then another, and another, small species, weak species, species that had been ignored and exploited and forgotten by the great powers. One by one they spoke up, dozens of them, then hundreds. The great powers watched in disbelief. The balance of the galaxy was shifting before their eyes, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Tiho stood at the center of it all. He had not expected this. He had come prepared to be punished, maybe even imprisoned. Instead, he was witnessing the birth of something new. "Earth accepts these alliances," he said. "We will stand with you, we will protect you, and if anyone threatens you, they will answer to us." When Tiho returned to Velen Prime, he found his crew waiting for him. Sergeant Minu was there, still recovering from his wounds but refusing to stay in bed. Lieutenant Hana stood beside him, her arms crossed, trying to hide her relief that the captain had returned safely. Private Suho was there too. He had changed in the past month. His eyes were older now. He had seen too much to ever be truly young again. But he had also found something inside himself that he had not known was there. Purpose. Meaning. Dr. Nari was helping a Velen child walk on a new prosthetic leg that human doctors had designed for her. The child laughed as she took her first steps without pain. Nari smiled, and in that moment, all the horror of the battle seemed worth it. A ceremony was held at the Temple of 1,000 Moons. The Velen wanted to honor their saviors. They did not have much to give, but they gave what they could. They erected a statue at the temple entrance. It was carved from the stone of the temple itself, the most sacred material on their world. The statue showed a human soldier standing with weapon in hand. At his feet, a Velen child looked up at him with hope in her eyes. Elder Oren spoke the dedication. His voice was old and tired, but filled with emotion. We called out into the darkness and we expected nothing. No one had ever answered before. No one had ever cared, but the humans heard us. They came. They fought. They bled and died for strangers they had never met. He looked at the statue, then at the humans gathered below. We do not understand you. Perhaps we never will. You are creatures of violence and death. Your world shaped you into weapons, but you chose to use that strength to protect us. You chose to be heroes instead of monsters. He bowed his head. The Velen will never forget. As long as our people exist, we will remember the day the Deathworlders answered our call. We will tell our children and they will tell theirs. Forever. Young Vila approached the statue after the ceremony. She carried a small flower, the first to bloom in the temple gardens since the invasion. She placed it at the base of the statue and stood there for a long moment. Suho found her there. He had come to say goodbye. The Iron Wake was leaving, recalled to Earth for repairs and new orders, but they would be back. They had promised. "Thank you," Vila said quietly. Suho knelt so he was at her level. "Thank you for being brave, for surviving. That took more courage than anything I did." Vila looked at him with those bright, innocent eyes. "Will you come back?" "Yes, whenever you need us." "Promise?" Suho smiled. It was the first real smile he had given since landing on this planet. "I promise." He stood and walked back to the shuttle. He did not look back. If he had, he might not have been able to leave. As the Iron Wake lifted off from Velen Prime, Captain Tiho stood on the bridge and watched the planet grow smaller beneath them. It was still scarred, still wounded, but it was alive, and it would recover. Across the galaxy, a message spread through subspace channels. It passed from ship to ship, from station to station, from the smallest colony to the mightiest empire. It was simple, short, but it carried more weight than any treaty or declaration. "If you are in danger, if no one else will come, call Earth. The Deathworlders will answer." The Iron Wake jumped to warp and disappeared among the stars. Behind them, Velen Prime continued to turn. The sun rose over the temple of 1,000 moons, and at the base of the statue, the flower continued to bloom. The universe was vast and cold and often cruel, but somewhere out there, there were monsters who protected the weak, demons who fought for the innocent. There were humans, and as long as they existed, hope would never truly die.